The stars had never seemed so close. Admiral Kyle Bennett stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the viewport with careful eyes. After 200 years of reaching into space, humanity had finally found what it had been searching for. They were not alone. The alien ship appeared 3 days ago near the Jupiter station. It was massive, nearly twice the size of Earth's largest military vessel. Its hull gleamed with colors that seemed to shift and change in the light. When the aliens sent their first message, the entire human government held its breath. Dr. Lisa Morgan was the first person to hear the alien voices translated into English. She sat in her laboratory on Earth, tears running down her face as she listened. The message was simple and beautiful. The Galactic Council welcomed humanity to the community of intelligent species. They came in peace. They wanted to be friends. Ambassador Claire Hudson prepared for the meeting that would change everything. She wore her best uniform and practiced her speech 100 times. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about since the first person looked up at the night sky. She would represent all of Earth in front of beings from distant stars. The Council sent 7 representatives, 1 from each member species. They arrived in smaller ships and came aboard the human space station with grace and dignity. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated or moved in ways that seemed impossible. But all of them smiled, or did whatever their species did to show friendship. Captain Greg Martinez commanded the ESS Vengeance, Earth's most powerful warship. He stayed in orbit during the meeting, his weapons ready but hidden. Admiral Bennett had ordered him to be careful. They trusted the aliens, but not completely. Not yet. The first meeting lasted 6 hours. The Council representatives spoke about their civilization, which had existed for over 10,000 years. They told stories of peace and cooperation among hundreds of worlds. They showed images of beautiful cities on planets humans had never imagined. They offered technology that could cure diseases, provide unlimited energy, and make travel between stars as easy as walking across a room. Ambassador Hudson listened with wonder growing in her heart. Everything the Council said sounded perfect. They wanted to help humanity. They wanted to guide Earth into this new age. All they asked in return was friendship and trust. But Admiral Bennett, watching from his ship, felt something wrong. He could not explain it. The aliens said all the right words. They offered amazing gifts, yet something in their eyes, or whatever served as eyes for each species, made him uncomfortable. He had spent 40 years in the military. He had learned to trust his instincts about danger. Dr. Morgan worked with the alien scientists, learning about their technology. They taught her about their power sources and their computers. They showed her medical advances that could add 50 years to human life. She was so excited that she barely slept. This was everything she had worked for her entire career. The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. The Council presented a treaty that would make Earth an official member of their civilization. The document was long and complex, filled with legal terms in both human and alien languages. Ambassador Hudson read it carefully, asking questions about each section. The treaty promised Earth protection from hostile species. It offered access to Council trade networks and technology. It guaranteed human rights and freedoms. In exchange, Earth would limit its military expansion to agreed zones. Humans would share their own technology and resources. They would follow Council laws when traveling in Council space. Senator Paul Wright led the political debate on Earth. He argued passionately for accepting the treaty. This was humanity's chance to join something greater than itself. The Council had existed for thousands of years without major war. They had solved problems that still plagued Earth: poverty, disease, violence between nations. The Council had eliminated all of these things in their space. Admiral Bennett spoke against rushing the decision. He pointed out clauses in the treaty that seemed to limit Earth's freedom more than protect it. Why did the Council want to control where humans could build colonies? Why did they demand access to Earth's military databases? Why were some sections of the treaty written in ways that could be interpreted differently? But his voice was drowned out by excitement. The people of Earth wanted this. They wanted to reach for the stars and walk beside aliens as equals. They wanted the medicine that could save their children and the energy that could end climate change. They wanted to believe that the universe was a good place. Commander Jake Sullivan worked in Earth's intelligence division. While everyone else celebrated, he quietly studied everything the Council had given them. He analyzed their language patterns and their body language. He looked at the things they did not say as much as the things they did say. What he found made him deeply worried, but he had no proof. Only suspicions and fragments of data that might mean nothing. 6 months after first contact, Earth signed the treaty. The ceremony was broadcast across every human world and station. Ambassador Hudson and the council representatives pressed their hands or appendages to a digital document. Humanity officially joined the Galactic Council. The celebration lasted a week. Cities across Earth lit up with fireworks and parties. Children learned alien names in school. Scientists began working with council technology. It seemed like the beginning of a golden age. Dr. Morgan invited a council scientist to visit her family home. They ate dinner together and she asked questions about worlds she might someday visit. The alien seemed kind and patient, answering everything she asked. But when she mentioned humanity's plans to explore certain sectors of space, the alien's expression changed for just a moment. It was barely noticeable, but Morgan saw something cold in those alien eyes. Something that looked almost like contempt. Admiral Bennett ordered his fleet to continue regular patrols, treaty or no treaty. Captain Martinez took the ESS Vengeance to the edge of human space, watching and waiting. His crew thought he was being paranoid. They thought the war was over before it began. They were wrong. In the council chambers, far from Earth, the 7 species gathered in secret. They discussed the human problem. Humanity was growing too fast, learning too quickly. They showed signs of aggression and independence. The council had seen species like this before. Species that refused to accept their proper place. Species that had to be controlled before they became dangerous. The vote was unanimous. Earth would be dealt with soon. Very soon. Commander Jake Sullivan had not slept properly in 3 weeks. His office was filled with papers and data screens showing communication patterns between council ships. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones, and now he had the evidence to prove it. The encrypted messages had been difficult to break. The council used security systems far beyond Earth's technology, but humanity had one advantage the aliens did not expect. Human hackers were creative in ways that rule-following alien societies could never understand. A young programmer named Kevin Chen had found a weakness in the council's code. It took him 48 hours of constant work, but he cracked it. What Sullivan found inside those messages made his blood run cold. The council was planning an attack. Not someday in the distant future, but now. Within days. The messages discussed which human colonies to hit first. They listed Earth's defense weaknesses. They even included casualty estimates written in the cold language of military planning. Sullivan took the evidence straight to Admiral Bennett. The old admiral read the translations twice, his face growing darker with each word. He had been right to trust his instincts. The council had never wanted peace. They wanted submission. And when humanity refused to bow low enough, they decided to force the issue. Bennett called an emergency meeting with Earth's military command. But before the meeting could begin, alarms started screaming across every human installation in space. Lieutenant Amy Foster was flying a patrol route near the colony on Proxima Base when her sensors exploded with warnings. Ships were appearing from faster-than-light jumps, dozens of them. All council vessels, all with weapons charging. She opened her communication channel to warn the colony, but the council was faster. Beams of pure energy lanced down from orbit, striking the colony's shields. The shields held for maybe 5 seconds. Then they failed, and the beams continued down to the surface. Amy watched in horror as entire sections of the colony simply vanished in flashes of light. Buildings that housed families. Schools where children learned. Hospitals full of sick people, all gone in moments. She screamed into her radio for the colony to evacuate, but there was no answer. There was nothing left to answer. The attack hit 3 colonies at the same time. Proxima Base, New Chicago on the Ross 154 system, the mining settlement at Wolf 359. Over 2 million people died in the first hour. Men, women, and children who had done nothing wrong except be born human. But the council was not finished. As their warships bombarded the colonies, other ships moved toward Earth itself. They carried a weapon that humanity had never seen before. A device that generated electromagnetic pulses across an entire planet. The weapon fired from a position beyond the moon. Earth's defense satellites died instantly, their electronics fried by the pulse. Power grids across the planet failed. Military bases went dark. Communication networks crashed. In one moment, Earth was thrown back to the age before electricity. Admiral Bennett's flagship was near Mars when the attack began. He immediately ordered his ship to jump toward Earth, but Council warships were waiting. They appeared from nowhere, their weapons already firing. Bennett's ship took 3 direct hits before its shields could fully activate. Captain Greg Martinez and the ESS Vengeance were farther out near Jupiter. When Martinez saw the attack beginning, he made a decision that probably saved his ship. Instead of rushing to help, he shut down everything except life support and let his ship drift like a piece of debris. The Council ship scanned right past him, looking for active threats. On Earth, people stumbled out of their homes into streets lit only by fires and the dim glow of the moon. They looked up at the sky where Council ships now orbited like vultures. Ambassador Claire Hudson stood in the ruins of the United Nations building in New York, tears streaming down her face. She had trusted them. She had believed their promises of peace. She had helped humanity walk into this trap. The Council broadcast a message to every human world and station. The voice was translated into English, but there was no warmth in it anymore. No pretense of friendship. Humanity was declared a quarantined species. Humans were forbidden from leaving their current systems. Any human ship found beyond the quarantine zone would be destroyed without warning. Earth was to dismantle its military within 30 days. Any resistance would result in the complete destruction of human civilization. The message ended with a simple statement. This was not war. This was pest control. Humanity had shown itself to be dangerous and unwilling to accept its place. The Council had dealt with species like this before. None of them existed anymore. Senator Paul Wright sat in a dark bunker beneath Washington, listening to the message repeat. He had argued for trust. He had convinced people to sign the treaty. The weight of 2 million deaths pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain. He had helped kill them all, but not everyone was ready to give up. Admiral Bennett's flagship was damaged but not destroyed. Captain Martinez brought the ESS Vengeance out of hiding and began gathering other surviving ships. Commander Sullivan released the intercepted messages to every human station that still had working communications. The people of Earth needed to know the truth. The Council had planned this from the beginning. Dr. Lisa Morgan worked in a hospital in San Francisco, helping treat people injured when the power failed. She had believed in the Council's goodness. She had defended them against doubters. Now she understood that intelligence did not mean wisdom, and age did not mean virtue. The Council was old and smart and completely evil. Lieutenant Amy Foster managed to land her fighter on a human carrier that survived the initial attack. She reported what she had seen at Proxima Base. The other pilots listened in silence. Some of them had family on those colonies. Some of them had friends. All of them had rage burning in their hearts. The Council expected humanity to surrender within days. Their xenologists had studied human psychology and history. Humans fought each other constantly. They surrendered when facing superior force. They valued individual survival over group loyalty. Every model predicted that Earth would accept the quarantine rather than face extinction. But the Council's experts had made a critical error. They had studied human conflicts between different human groups. They had never considered what happened when humanity faced an outside threat. They did not understand what they had just created. Admiral Bennett broadcasted a message of his own. It went to every surviving human ship and station. It went to colonies that still had people alive. It went to Earth, where millions listened on old battery-powered radios. The message was short. Earth would not surrender. Not today, not ever. The Council had just made the worst mistake in their 10,000-year history. They had given humanity a reason to unite. They had shown humans exactly what the stakes were. And they had proven that the universe was not a safe place where good intentions were enough. Admiral Bennett's last words echoed across human space. The Council wanted war. Now they would learn what war really meant. General Nathan Cross had been waiting for this moment his entire career. Not hoping for it. Not wanting it. But preparing for it. Because Cross understood something that most people preferred to ignore. Peace was wonderful. But peace depended on the willingness to fight when necessary. For 15 years, Cross had run a program that officially did not exist. Deep in the asteroid belt, hidden inside rocks that looked natural, humanity had built weapons research facilities. They had done this quietly, without telling most of Earth's government. Some called it paranoia. Cross called it insurance. When Admiral Bennett's fleet arrived at the secret rendezvous point, Cross was waiting with information that would change everything. He stood on the bridge of a station that appeared on no official maps and showed the Admiral what humanity had really been doing, while everyone else dreamed of alien friendship. Project Hellstorm was the name. The files contained designs for weapons that Earth's politicians would never have approved in peacetime. Weapons designed specifically to fight enemies with superior technology. Weapons that took advantage of the one thing humans did better than any other species: the ability to think in ways that broke every rule. Dr. Helen Price led the scientific team. She was 55 years old, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many classified documents. She explained each weapon system to the gathered military commanders with the calm precision of someone describing household appliances. The first system was called Hornet. Thousands of tiny drones, each no bigger than a human fist. They were not smart individually, but they worked together using artificial intelligence that learned and adapted. Release a swarm of Hornets near an enemy ship, and they would find every weakness, exploit every gap, and tear the ship apart from the inside. The second system had a simpler name: Hammer. These were missiles that accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed before impact. At those velocities, even a small projectile hit with the force of a nuclear weapon. The Council's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and slower projectiles. They were not designed for something moving at relativistic speeds. Dr. Price saved the worst for last. Plague. Human scientists had studied the biological samples the Council had shared so generously. They had learned how alien immune systems worked, and then they had designed viruses and bacteria that would attack those systems with devastating efficiency. Price made it clear that she found this weapon personally disgusting, but disgust did not make it less effective. Admiral Bennett listened to all of it with a face like stone. These weapons violated every treaty humanity had signed. They violated rules of warfare that civilized species had followed for thousands of years. They were cruel and underhanded and designed to cause maximum damage with minimum warning. He approved their immediate deployment. Captain Greg Martinez took the ESS Vengeance and 8 other surviving warships on the first counterattack. Their target was a Council supply depot in the Epsilon Eridani system. Intelligence suggested the depot was lightly defended. The Council did not believe humans would dare to strike back. The attack happened at midnight station time. Martinez's ships came out of their jump at maximum speed, weapons already firing. The Council defenders had about 30 seconds of warning. It was not enough. Hammer missiles struck the depot's shields at impossible speeds, overwhelming them instantly. Hornet swarms poured into the breach. The depot was destroyed in 4 minutes. Every ship docked there. Every supply container. Every gallon of fuel and every weapon stored in the facility. Martinez's ships jumped away before Council reinforcements could arrive. Behind them, the depot burned in the silence of space. Commander Tyler Reed led a team that Earth's military called the Phantoms. 20 soldiers trained in every form of combat humanity had invented. They specialized in operations that regular forces could not or would not perform: assassination, sabotage, intelligence, gathering using methods that were technically torture. Reed and his team infiltrated a Council station by hiding inside a supply shipment. They spent 3 days in a cargo container without making a sound, breathing recycled air and eating cold rations. When the container was finally opened on the station, the Phantoms emerged like demons from a nightmare. They killed 16 Council soldiers in the first minute, using weapons that made no sound. They hacked into the station's computer core and downloaded everything they could find: ship movements, supply routes, communication protocols, defense codes. Then they set explosives throughout the station's critical systems and disappeared back into the cargo areas. The station exploded 6 hours later. The Phantoms were already light years away, bringing their stolen data back to Earth. The intelligence changed everything. Earth now knew where every major Council asset was located. They knew which systems were lightly defended and which ones had heavy military presence. Most importantly, they knew something about the Council that the aliens had tried very hard to hide. The Council species had never fought a real war. Not in living memory. For thousands of years, they had maintained peace by being so overwhelmingly powerful that no one dared challenge them. They had systems and protocols for dealing with minor rebellions. They had nothing in place for an enemy that refused to follow the expected patterns. Dr. Price and her team studied the Council's technology with new understanding. The aliens were advanced, yes, but their advancement had made them predictable. Their computer systems all followed the same basic architecture. Their ships were built to standard templates. Their military tactics came from textbooks that were centuries old. Humans had none of these limitations. Every human ship was slightly different because every shipyard had its own methods. Human computer systems were a chaotic mess that only humans could fully understand. And human tactics were whatever worked in the moment, regardless of what the textbook said was proper. Price created a virus specifically designed to attack Council artificial intelligence. It did not destroy the AI or shut it down. Instead, it made the AI doubt itself, made it see threats that were not there, made it waste resources chasing shadows while real attacks came from different directions. She uploaded the virus into a captured Council communication drone and set it free. Within 2 weeks, the virus had infected 17 major Council networks. Their ships started making bizarre decisions. Their defense systems fired at false targets. Their supply networks routed materials to the wrong locations. Captain Martinez led another strike, this time against a Council patrol group near Tau Ceti. His 3 ships faced 9 Council vessels with superior shields and weapons. It should have been suicide. But Martinez had loaded his ships with the new virus. He broadcast it at the Council ships while staying just out of weapons range. The Council ships immediately started targeting each other, their AI convinced that the real threat was the vessel next to them. Martinez watched as 9 advanced warships tore each other apart, while his ship sat safely in the distance. When the firing finally stopped, Martinez moved in and finished off the survivors. Earth's strategy was becoming clear. Humanity could not win a traditional war against the Council. Human ships were too few and too weak. But this was not a traditional war. This was a fight for survival, and humans fought those with every dirty trick they could imagine. The Council began to realize their mistake. They had attacked humanity expecting quick surrender. Instead, they had awakened something that fought back with a viciousness that shocked them. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. Human viruses infected their systems. Human agents sabotaged their facilities, and worst of all, humans refused to quit. The Council destroyed human ships and more appeared. They killed human soldiers and more volunteered. They demanded surrender and humans laughed at them. It was not logical. It was not rational. It was pure human stubbornness combined with human rage. Ambassador Claire Hudson had stopped crying. She worked now in the military command center, using her knowledge of Council culture to predict their moves. She had trusted them once. Never again. She would spend whatever life she had left making them regret every kind word they had spoken, every lie they had told, every human they had killed. The war was only beginning. But already the Council was learning a lesson that would cost them dearly. Never provoke someone who has nothing left to lose. 3 months into the war, the Council faced a reality they had never imagined. They were losing. Not quickly and not everywhere, but the trend was clear. Human forces were gaining strength while Council forces grew weaker. And worse, the Council was starting to fight itself. Admiral Patricia Hayes commanded the newly built ESS Retribution. The ship was massive, nearly as large as the Council flagship that had brought the first aliens to Earth. But where Council ships followed 10,000 years of traditional design, the Retribution was something new. Something that mixed alien technology with human innovation in ways that made Council engineers shake their heads in confusion. The ship's power core used Council fusion technology, but modified to run 20% hotter than the aliens said was safe. The weapons combined human railgun designs with alien energy projectors. The shields adapted in real time using artificial intelligence that learned from every hit. And the ship could jump to faster than light speeds with only 30 seconds of preparation instead of the 3 minutes Council ships needed. Engineer Sophie Turner had designed most of it. She was 32 years old, had never served in the military before the war, and had a habit of ignoring every rule about how things were supposed to work. When Council technology said something could not be done, Turner asked why not and then did it anyway. Hayes took the Retribution and a fleet of 20 ships deep into Council space. Not to their border, not to their outlying colonies, but to their core worlds. The planets where the Council species had lived in peace for thousands of years. The worlds that had never known war. The first target was a Council shipyard orbiting the planet Nexara Prime. The shipyard built half of all Council military vessels. It was protected by defense stations, patrol ships, and enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. It had never been attacked in its entire 4,000-year history. Hayes came out of her jump right on top of the shipyard. The Retribution's modified shields held against the initial defensive fire. Her weapons opened up at point-blank range, tearing into the shipyard structure. She launched every hornet swarm she carried, and the tiny drones poured into the shipyard like angry insects. The battle lasted 37 minutes. When Hayes jumped away, the shipyard was a broken ruin floating in orbit. The Council had just lost half of their ship construction capacity, and Hayes had shown them that nowhere in their space was safe anymore. Agent Ryan Clark had been living on a Council colony world for 2 months. He pretended to be a trader from a neutral alien species, speaking the language with an accent that suggested he came from the far edge of Council space. No one questioned him closely. The Council was used to being safe. Clark moved through their society with careful patience, gathering information and making contacts. He found Council citizens who were unhappy with their government, scientists who thought the war was wrong, merchants who were losing money because of military spending, politicians who had voted against attacking humanity and were now being proven right. He fed them information, showed them images of the destroyed human colonies, explained that Earth had offered peace before the attacks, made sure they knew that their government had started this war with a sneak attack on civilians. And he watched as doubt began to spread through Council society like poison. When Admiral Hayes attacked the shipyard at Nexara Prime, Clark made sure the images spread across Council networks. He showed Council citizens their invincible defenses being torn apart. He made sure they heard the casualty numbers. 3,000 Council workers died in that attack. 3,000 deaths that made the Council population start asking hard questions about this war. The Council leadership tried to maintain unity. They broadcast messages about the human threat, about how dangerous Earth would become if not stopped now, about the duty all Council species had to support the war effort. But their words were starting to sound hollow. Dr. Helen Price continued her work on Earth, developing new weapons and improving old ones. But she also started a different project, one that had nothing to do with killing. She gathered everything humanity had learned about Council biology and medicine. Then she started designing cures. The Council species suffered from diseases just like humans did. Some of those diseases were rare but deadly. Price created treatments that Council medicine had never developed. Cures for genetic disorders. Treatments for conditions that affected their children. She did not do this out of kindness. She did it as a weapon more dangerous than any plague. Price released the medical information to Council territory through back channels. She made sure it came with a simple message. Humanity could kill, but humanity could also heal. Earth offered these cures freely to any Council citizen who wanted them. No conditions. No payment required. Just a gift from the species the Council was trying to destroy. The psychological impact was devastating. Council citizens started to question everything their government told them. If humans were the monsters their leaders claimed, why were they giving away medical treatments? If this was a war of extinction, why was Earth offering help instead of just more violence? The Council military faced a different problem. Human tactics continued to evolve in ways that made traditional military planning useless. Captain Martinez would attack a target, and when Council reinforcements arrived, they would find a different human force attacking somewhere else entirely. Commander Reed's phantoms appeared inside Council space at random, sabotaging systems and vanishing before anyone could respond, and the viruses kept spreading. Dr. Price had created a dozen variants by now, each one targeting a different aspect of Council technology. Their communications became unreliable. Their sensors gave false readings. Their automated systems did things that made no sense. The Council was fighting enemies they could see and enemies they could not, all at the same time. 6 months into the war, the first Council species broke ranks. The Velian people, one of the smaller Council members, announced they were withdrawing from military operations against Earth. Their government said the war was unjust and that they would no longer participate. The Council leadership was furious, but they could not force the Velians to fight. Not without starting a civil war among their own people. Other species started to waver. Internal debates became public arguments. The council that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years was fracturing under the pressure of a war that was supposed to be over in days. Earth sent new peace terms. Humans demanded complete autonomy for their species. They wanted reparations for the destroyed colonies. They wanted the council to withdraw all forces from human space and to formally acknowledge that the attack was wrong. And they wanted a guarantee that no species would ever face what humanity had faced. The council leadership refused. They could not accept these terms without admitting total defeat. Their pride would not allow it. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they could not imagine bowing to a younger species, so they decided to gamble everything on one massive attack. They gathered their remaining military forces, over 300 ships, the largest fleet ever assembled in council history. They would strike at Earth itself, destroy the human homeworld and end the war through overwhelming force. If humanity had no home to return to, they would finally surrender. Admiral Bennett learned about the attack from Agent Clark's intelligence network. He knew Earth's defenses could not stop a fleet that size, so he made plans for something that the Council would never expect. Instead of defending Earth, he would attack the Council capital station. Operation Exodus would be the biggest gamble in human history. Every available human ship would jump to the Council's seat of power, while the Council fleet was attacking Earth. They would capture or destroy the station where the Council government ruled. They would cut the head off the enemy. It was insane. It violated every rule of military strategy. You did not abandon your homeworld to attack the enemy capital. But Admiral Bennett understood something important. Earth was not just a planet anymore. Earth was an idea. As long as humans survived anywhere, Earth survived with them. The Council fleet jumped toward Earth, confident in their numbers. Admiral Bennett jumped toward the Council capital, betting everything on one desperate throw. The final battle was about to begin. The Council capital station hung in space like a jewel. It was called Unity. Built during the first years when the Council formed, millions of beings lived there, representing every Council species. It was a symbol of everything the Council claimed to be: peace, cooperation, civilization. Admiral Bennett's fleet came out of faster-than-light travel directly above the station. 147 human ships, including the ESS Retribution with Admiral Hayes at the helm. It was every combat-capable vessel humanity could gather, and it was about to attack the most heavily defended location in Council space. The station's defenses activated immediately. Weapons platforms opened fire. Shield generators powered up to maximum. Patrol ships scrambled to intercept. The Council had prepared for the possibility of attack, even if they never truly believed it would happen. But human forces had three advantages the Council did not expect. First, they had detailed intelligence from Agent Clark about the station's weak points. Second, they had Dr. Price's viruses already embedded in the station's computer systems. And third, they had absolutely nothing to lose. Admiral Hayes took the Retribution straight into the heaviest fire. Her modified shields held against weapons that should have destroyed her ship. She returned fire with everything she had, targeting the exact points Clark had identified. Behind her, the rest of the human fleet spread out in a pattern that made no sense to Council defenders but worked perfectly for the humans. On the station, panic spread through the population. People who had lived in peace for their entire lives suddenly found themselves in a war zone. Council leadership evacuated to secure bunkers deep inside the station. They sent urgent messages to their fleet attacking Earth, ordering them to return immediately. But the Council fleet was 8 hours away, and the battle was happening now. Human forces were not trying to destroy the station. They were trying to capture it. Marines in combat armor blasted through airlocks and fought their way inside. Commander Reed and his Phantoms led assault teams toward the Council government chambers. The fighting inside the station was brutal. Council soldiers had better training and better equipment. But human soldiers fought with a fury that shocked their enemies. Every human in that battle remembered the destroyed colonies, remembered the 2 million dead, remembered that the Council had started this war by attacking civilians without warning. President Karen Wells watched the battle from Earth, where a skeleton defense force prepared to face the incoming Council fleet. She knew that if Bennett failed, Earth was finished. The Council would destroy everything. But if Bennett succeeded, humanity might survive. It was a terrible choice, but Bennett had convinced her it was the only choice. On the Council station, Ambassador Victor Lang moved through the chaos with a different mission. He was not there to fight. He was there to talk. Lang had been a negotiator before the war, someone who believed in solving problems with words instead of weapons. The war had not changed his beliefs, only his methods. He found a group of council politicians huddled in a conference room, protected by nervous guards. Lang approached with his hands raised, speaking in the council's common language. He told them the truth. The battle was already lost. Human forces controlled half the station. The council military was hours away. They could continue fighting and watch the station be destroyed, or they could talk peace right now. One of the council leaders, an elderly being from a species that looked like walking trees, asked what terms Earth wanted. Lang told him, autonomy for humanity, reparations, withdrawal from human space, and one more thing. The council had to change. No more rule by force. No more crushing species that did not obey. True cooperation or humanity would burn the council down completely. Above the station, Admiral Bennett received a communication from the council leadership. They wanted to negotiate. He held his fire and waited, giving Lang time to work. Around him, human ships maintained their positions, weapons ready but not firing. They were bloodied and damaged, but they were winning. The council fleet arrived to find the battle already over. The council government had surrendered. Human forces controlled the station. Admiral Bennett had won the most improbable victory in military history. He had gambled everything and succeeded. The peace negotiations took 3 weeks. The council species argued among themselves as much as they negotiated with Earth. The Velians demanded major reforms. Other species that had quietly opposed the war found their voices. The council that emerged from those negotiations was very different from the council that had first contacted Earth. President Karen Wells represented Earth at the final talks. She was 58 years old, had served as president for 6 years before the war, and had aged another 10 years in the past 6 months. She listened to proposals and counter-proposals with patience born from exhaustion. Some in Earth's government wanted revenge, wanted to crush the council the way the council had tried to crush humanity. Wells refused. She had learned something during the war. Power without wisdom created monsters. Earth could become the new tyrant of the galaxy, but that would make humanity no better than the council it had defeated. Instead, Wells proposed something radical. Dismantle the council completely. Replace it with a democratic federation where every species had a voice and a vote, where no single species or group of species could dominate others, where conflicts were resolved through debate and compromise, not military force. The council species were shocked. Many resisted the idea, but the war had proven that the old system did not work. It had led to this disaster, and human military power ensured that Earth's voice could not be ignored. Slowly, reluctantly, the council agreed to transform itself. Ambassador Victor Lang worked with representatives from 17 species to write the new Federation Charter. It guaranteed rights for all member species. It limited military forces to what was needed for defense. It required disputes to be settled through negotiation, not force. And it specifically forbade attacking civilian populations or declaring entire species as enemies. Captain Nina Ross led the first contact teams that reached out to species outside the old council territory. Hundreds of civilizations had existed beyond council space, either too weak to resist or too far away to matter. Ross brought them messages of peace and offers of cooperation. Many were suspicious at first, afraid that humans were just a new form of conqueror. But Ross was patient and persistent. Dr. Lisa Morgan returned to her work as a xenobiologist, but with a different purpose now. She helped establish joint research programs between human and alien scientists, shared medical knowledge, worked on problems that no single species could solve alone. She had believed in cooperation before the war. The war had taught her that cooperation had to be built on honesty and respect, not lies and domination. Admiral Bennett took command of the new Galactic Defense Coalition. It was a military force drawn from multiple species, designed to protect the Federation from external threats. Bennett was the obvious choice to lead it. He had proven he could win against impossible odds. But more importantly, he had proven he knew when not to fight. The former council species were offered a choice: join the new Federation as equal members or go their own way in peace. Most chose to join. A few chose independence, and the Federation respected that choice. The days of forcing species to obey were over. Earth began the long process of rebuilding the destroyed colonies. Humans and aliens worked side by side on the construction. The colonies would be memorials as much as homes, places where people could remember what had been lost and why it must never happen again. Senator Paul Wright spent the rest of his life working on the rebuilding efforts. He never forgave himself for trusting the Council, but he channeled that guilt into making sure the new Federation was built on truth instead of pretty lies. He became one of its strongest voices for transparency and accountability. Lieutenant Amy Foster trained new pilots from a dozen species in combat tactics. She hoped they would never need to use those skills, but the war had taught everyone that hoping for peace was not enough. You had to be ready to defend it. Agent Ryan Clark disappeared after the war. Some said he continued working in intelligence, watching for new threats. Others said he retired to a quiet colony world to live in peace. Clark never told anyone which story was true. He preferred to keep his secrets. Dr. Helen Price destroyed all her research on the biological weapons. She kept the medical treatments and shared them freely. She wanted to be remembered for healing, not for death. The galaxy let her have that wish. 5 years after the war ended, President Karen Wells stood on a platform on the rebuilt Proxima base. Around her were humans and aliens, all gathered to dedicate a memorial to those who had died in the Council attack. The memorial was a simple wall with 2 million names carved into black stone. Every person who had been killed in the first strike. Wells spoke to the crowd about loss and sacrifice, about the cost of freedom and the price of peace, about how easy it is to start a war and how hard it is to build something better. She talked about the future the Federation was trying to create, a galaxy where no species would ever again face what humanity had faced. In the crowd, children played together. Human kids chased alien kids in games that mixed rules from both cultures. They laughed and shouted, and they did not care the